You answered the summons. That's good. Because if you didn't do that, the bank is going to try to win the foreclosure case without you even having the chance to be heard. And most homeowners in New York don't really understand that even when you're answering the summons, it does not stop the foreclosure. But what it actually does is stop you from losing the case, losing your home by saying nothing. So once you answer the summons, something really, really important happens because it changes the case. You didn't stop the foreclosure, but you did stop the bank from winning the case by default. So let's say that if you never answer the summons, the court will assume that you're not contesting the foreclosure, and that's bad. And that allows the bank to move forward with the foreclosure without your participation. But as soon as you file an answer, the court now knows you're in the case, which means that the foreclosure has to move through the legal process with you involved. And that's when the next stage usually begins. And at this point, a lot of homeowners starts wondering about something. They start thinking, okay, so I answered the summons, so what actually happens now, right? One of the first things that usually happens in a New York foreclosure case after the summons is answered is something that's called a settlement conference. Now, when homeowners hear the word settlement conference, they often mistake and assume that the case is about to be settled in court. Please don't confuse this because that's not really what it means. A settlement conference is basically a meeting that's required by the court where you, the homeowner, and the bank try to see if the foreclosure can be resolved before foreclosure moves deeper into the legal process. And this usually takes place in a special foreclosure part of the court. Sometimes you will be speaking to the judge. Sometimes you might be speaking to the court attorney. Sometimes it might even be the referee that's assigned by the court. And the bank's attorney is going to be there representing the lender. But it's important to understand something about the settlement conference. This is not a trial, so please don't be scared. You're not walking into court and having a judge decide that day if you get to keep or lose your home. The main purpose of the conference is to see if there's any way possible that the foreclosure can be resolved. And depending on the situation, different options may be offered and discussed during that time. Sometimes it's a loan modification on review. Sometimes it's a repayment plan. Sometimes it's a short sale. And sometimes it's simply evaluating what solutions may still exist for you to save your home. Homeowners are usually expected to come prepared with documents to these conferences. Documents like pay stubs, tax returns, monthly expenses information, mortgage statements, proof of income or benefits, property tax information and bills, and anything that helps show your financial situation and can help you keep your house. Of course, if that's what you want. Because the more organized the information is, the easier it becomes to evaluate what type of options might actually be still possible for you. And here's something else homeowners often don't even realize is that the settlement conference usually does not happen in just one appearance. I don't want you to think that you'll show up to court once and everything will be decided that day, because foreclosure often happens more than once. The court may schedule another conference date and sometimes even another one after that, because documents are being reviewed here. Financial information is going to be evaluated. Or sometimes negotiations are happening between you, the homeowner, and the lender during this time, and it requires additional visit. So this stage of the case can sometimes stretch over several months. And during that time, the court is essentially giving both sides the opportunity to see if the foreclosure can be resolved before the case actually moves deeper into the foreclosure process. Now, at this point, homeowners sometimes think that if the case is in these conferences, maybe the foreclosure is basically paused now. But no, not exactly. The settlement conference stage doesn't make the foreclosure disappear. It actually only gives the court an opportunity to see if the situation can be resolved before the case moves deeper into the litigation process. Now, I don't want you to be surprised about what I'm going to say next. Just because a foreclosure case has started does not automatically mean that you are losing the house. And a lot of people don't realize that because until foreclosure judgment is issued and the property goes to auction, you still fully own the home. And that means that depending on the numbers, there may still be some options on the table for you. In fact, I recently had a seller who was already in foreclosure. The case was very much active. We still had to attend the settlement conference, but this homeowner had equity in the property. So instead of letting the foreclosure continue to the auction sale, we put the house on the market. We didn't want to lose any time, and we found a buyer. The loan was paid off at closing, and she walked away with over $100,000 in equity. And once the mortgage was satisfied, the foreclosure case was discontinued. And a lot of homeowners don't even realize something like that is even possible. Most homeowners assume that once the foreclosure starts, the bank automatically takes the house. But that's not actually how the process works. That's a good thing. Until the foreclosure reaches the final stage of the court process, the homeowner still owns the property. Now, sometimes the settlement conference leads to a solution, but sometimes, unfortunately, it doesn't. And eventually, the court will release the case from the settlement conference stage. And when that happens, the foreclosure goes back into the regular court process. And it doesn't automatically mean that you've lost, but it does mean that the case is now moving deeper into the legal process where important decisions begin to get made one way or another. And this is the stage where some homeowners really need to understand their situation. Do you still have equity in the home? Is keeping the home financially realistic? Is a modification even possible? Or does it make more sense to look at other solutions before the case moves any further? Because the biggest mistake you can make at this point is believing that you still have unlimited time. Sometimes foreclosure cases appear like they move very slowly. And then suddenly the case starts to move much faster. And once foreclosure case leaves the settlement conference stage, the next steps in the court process can begin moving much more quickly. That's the moment when many homeowners realize the situation has become much more serious. And it's also the stage where many people lose control of the outcome because they did not make the necessary decisions when needed without realizing it. Don't make the same mistake by not answering the foreclosure summons. I'm going to walk you in the next video through what happens when the foreclosure case leaves the settlement conference stage and moves deeper into the court process. Make sure you watch that now. I will see you there.